Dr. Samir, shall we begin?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Joju John, the research coordinator of Martha Plus Training College. And today's invited talk is really unique in many respects because the resource person, Dr. Samir Babu, is an exceptional resource person, and he has got a special acumen in research also, and he would be talking on research. So this would be beneficial to all the teacher educators, student teachers, postgraduate students, and all the research scholars. So I would like you to send the poster and link to your colleagues and students so that they can also benefit. And this is the 32nd invited talk in the Insight in-Depth series, and warm welcome to everyone. And this is organized by the research scholars of Martha Plus Training College. And over to you, research scholars, please.
Okay, thank you, sir. I'm audible, sir?
Yes, Soumya, you're audible. Please.
Yes.
Okay. A very warm good evening to one and all. Respected Principal Dr. K.Y. Bennett, sir. Distinguished guest Dr. Samir, sir. Research Coordinator Dr. Joju, sir. Teachers, research scholars, and dear participants. I, Soumya D.E., research scholar on behalf of Martha Training College, welcome you all for the event Insight in Depth. Today we are proudly presenting our 30-second session of Insight in Depth. For very good beginning, blessings from Almighty. God is essential. Let's begin with prayer.
Thank you, Sanila. Now I invite Nitya SS for the welcome address.
Thank you, Soumya. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes.
you're audible.
Good evening, one and all. It gives me a great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to everyone who has joined today on this virtual platform for the 32nd session of Insight In-Depth webinar hosted by the Research Wing of Martiophilus Training College, Thiruvananthapuram. First of all, I would like to welcome Dr. K.Y. Benedict Sir, Principal, Martiophilus Training College, whose efficient leadership and guidance has helped the college to excel in all its endeavors. Welcome you, sir. Today, we have with us an eminent educationalist as our resource person, Dr. Samir Babu M., Assistant Professor, Department of Education, University of Kerala, Thiruvananthapuram. Today, who will be speaking on the topic Statistical Reasoning in Educational Research. We cordially welcome you, sir, to this program.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let me also welcome Dr. Joju John, sir, Research Coordinator, Research Wing of Martiophilus Training College, our constant source of motivation. We welcome you, sir, to this program.
Thank you.
Finally, let me welcome each one of you, teachers, research supervisors, research scholars, M.Ed and B.Ed students from all over the country who have joined us today for yet another enriching section. I welcome you all to this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Nitya. Today we have an eminent personality with us to share his words of wisdom with us.
Good evening. Am I audible? My audio is clear, Soumya?
Yes, Smriti.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Respected dignitaries and all other participants, it is my privilege to introduce today's resource person, Dr. Samir Babu M., to this event. Sir is presently working as Assistant Professor of Education in the Department of Education, University of Kerala. Earlier, he has worked in various universities like Central University Rajasthan, University of Delhi, Aligarh Muslim University, etc. He has published more than 40 papers, edited 15 books and authored 18 books. He has published 2 patents also. Sir has credited with 10 projects, including one major project of ICSSR Impress. For his hard work and efficiency, he was recently awarded with Shastri Mobility Grant to Canada and highest grant in Social Science faculty from University of Kerala. There is a lot to say about Samir sir's achievement. The stipulated time for me is not enough. So now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to Samir Babu sir. Once again, I welcome you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Smriti.
Smriti. And thank you, the team.
Before we get started, few humble requests to all participants. First of all, turn off your microphone as this will facilitate the smooth running of our talk. Secondly, this talk will be recorded by us and it will be given to you later through the YouTube platform of MTT. E-certificate will be issued to all participants and we will provide the feedback form in the chat box after the talk. During the presentation time, your valuable comments, suggestions and doubts in the chat box which will be considered in the discussion session after we run out of stock. I call Dr. Samir Babu sir to present their concept. Welcome sir, over to you.
Thank you, Soumya. So I'm happy to be here with you to discuss some of the significant aspects of research, that is statistical reasoning. I don't know to what extent I can give you some of the inputs that I have. Anyway, I'll try my level best to give you the basic statistical ideas. That is, as a research scholar, how can you find out the basics in statistics? It's actually, this is the need in any kind of research, and especially these days in the when we look into the scene of India, that is doctoral research environment in India, especially to the psychology and education, we mainly focus on quantitative aspects. We have many methodologies like correlational research, we have survey research, we have then experimental kinds. Anyway, all these are quantitative in nature. Rarely we attempt qualitative. Now, in this scene, let us discuss some of the aspects of reasoning in statistics. Let me share my screen and discuss accordingly. If you have any doubts, you can ask in between or at the end. We can take the questions together. So hopefully we'll have 1 hour presentations, 1 hour plus presentations, then we'll have some time for discussion. Okay, let me give, okay. This is my slide, the statistical reasoning. When we come to the field of statistics, as we know, I'm not at all touching the aspects of research here because my concentration is only on statistics. See, it is actually a tool of a researcher. So definitely, the success of research is based upon the success of the statistical selection or statistical calculations that we are having. That is why when significant colloquiums or significant presentations, review committee, open defenses, pre-submission presentations of students happen, people start asking questions on statistics because your data is quantitative and definitely its validity is based upon the worth of your statistics. To what extent you are successful in selecting, to what extent you are successful in consolidating and concluding the interpretation that you are having and that you got from the statistical calculations. That is very significant. You know that the statistics is all about probability. We are just highlighting some significant numbers in terms of okay, there is a probability. Probably this is the relationship between, there is a relationship. This is actually what we explain in terms of number. Say it is for like correlation, or it is t-test, it is the f-test, that is one way ANOVA, whatever it is. When you take an index, that means there is a probability. So when you apply this kind of statistics and you collect the data based on these and these tools, and definitely there is a chance of getting more and more clarity if you apply the same way, and there is a probability, there is a possibility that we talk about it through statistics actually. And of course, it's a choice. Statistics is a choice of the researcher. If I choose some statistics, you may not be choosing the same, because it is a choice. To what extent I structure my hypothesis, it's up to the hypothesis I select statistics appropriately. When we take it as a support, definitely we know that it's a support. It's really a support to the researcher, especially a quantitative researcher, to consolidate the findings of the research. When we do something quantitatively, definitely we will have questionnaire, we'll have schedule, that is tools we will have, tools of data collection. In research language, we call all of them as measures. Measures are the tools. In when you look into the scientific journals that is very reputed and indexed, if you see the scientific journal, they mention it as measure. So measure consists of all the tools and techniques that tools we employ in the data collection of the specific research. So there are many tools, as you know. We have schedule, we have questionnaire, we have checklist, we have semantic differential kind of scale. And generally, we use scale in education and psychological research. We use scaling. There are sometimes we use inventories, then tests. These are the tools that we use or measures that we employ in the research. So it gives you a support how to interpret it, how to take the exact meaning of that. Ultimately, we can say that at the end, we can say that everything is related to data in quantitative research. When we have qualitative research, like if you have grounded theory, if you have phenomenology, if you are talking about ethnometrology, discourse analysis, case analysis and case study, these are not actually based upon the data. These are based on the transcripts, narrations, and words. We are talking about words, and we are exercising some sort of analysis based on the words and sentences. But if it is quantitative, if you have a factorial design, if you have a qualitative, that is called, sorry, quantitative design with experimental concern, we use quantitative aspects, that is data. We have data. Now, when we come to the data, initial question is, when you have a question, you have a hypothesis, first you think in terms of what is my construct? What is my construct? So we in statistics, in educational research especially, I'm also clubbing it with, I'm taking the concern of the social work, psychology, sociology, economics kind of researchers together. So these are mostly we use quantitative research in this case. So when we take a construct, definitely we have to fix to what extent it is measurable. What is the level of measurement of the construct? The constructs in psychology and education, we call them as construct because all the concepts are very defined. But when we consider some specific concept, some specific thing as a construct, it may not be exactly measurable. Like intelligence is a construct. We cannot exactly measure it. We cannot exactly define it. That is why we take it as a construct in psychology and education. So when we have a construct, or generally we call them as variable. Variable I have. So once you have a variable, you just identify what is the level of measurement of the variable. Level of measurement is very significant in having very high significance in statistics and research. So how can we ensure, we can have same variable with different levels of measurement. It is up to the researcher to what extent you are using it. Say, for example, nominal scale. Nominal scale is simply we are taking a scale in order to classify them into 2 or 3 categories. Just boys and girls. Simply we are classifying. There is no rule of one is having more magnitude or the other is not having. There is no that kind of significance for the number. That kind of variables we generally call it as nominal variable. Those who are from rural areas, urban areas. Those who are studying in government schools and non-government school or private schools. So this is a simple classification. For the sake of comparison, we are dividing the entire group into 1 or 2 categories or more than 2 categories. So this kind of data, we call it as nominal data. Sex category is the nominal data, boy, girl. Or if you have third gender, we have. So that is the classification. Similarly, rural, urban, semi-urban, we have 3. So there is no criteria regarding its rank or its magnitude. When we add magnitude to that variable, nominal variable, when we add magnitude magnitude is a position. If magnitude or position is added to the nominal variable, it will be ordinal variable or rank variable. We have a rank because those who are having me, suppose you are taking some concept like, I can tell you things like health index. We say that health index, Kerala is #1 in India. So health #1 is Kerala, maybe #2 Maharashtra. I don't know exactly the health index. I'm just giving you some of the examples. The third is Delhi, for example. So if suppose this is the ranking, 1 is always 1. We cannot remove the position of Kerala to 2 and the Maharashtra to 1 because it is based on certain parameter. The overall magnitude of the health-wise attributes, Kerala is the first. Kerala is having the first position. So here the position is having its own significance. That is, magnitude matters in ordinal scale. There are lots of examples here. If you are comparing the students or correlating the students' social attributes to their position in schools. For example, you are taking social studies achievement. first rank, second rank, till you have 50 students in the class. So you took all the ranks of the students as such. That means first rank is not equal to second rank. Exactly, you are taking as such. Now, when you correlate it with their social attributes, whether it is nominal kind, whether it is ordinal, whatever it is, you are correlating, and accordingly you can produce an index. So here the order matters. That is why we call it as rank, or the attributes are having ranks, ordinal kind of variable. Sometimes we use this kind of variable. For example, achievement, we have many sources of achievement. So again, students have confusion here. When again, why I repeat all this, because sometimes students commit mistakes. Students means researchers commit mistakes, because in the schools these days, especially in the lower schools, we follow grading system. Sometimes you may not be getting the exact mark of the students, exact number of the students. So what number means mark. So what we do here we have the ranks, we have the grades. Grade is actually the nominal kind of explanation. A grade, all the people A grade, B grade, C grade, likewise. Otherwise, you can take it as a category wise also. But this, you cannot take it as an exact achievement of interval nature. So when we take the variable, you have to have a clarity whether you are getting the grade of the students. If it is a grade, it will become nominal variable. If it is exact mark, it will become interval variable. If you are taking the ranks of the students, it will be ordinal. So all these depend upon the selection of the statistics. You cannot do a correlation, product moment correlation with your nominal data. That is, if you take the grades of the students, you cannot go for a product moment correlation. That is actually the point that we have to have in mind. Second thing is ordinal. We have discussed ordinal. Now we have interval. Interval is actually interval scale again plus ordinal plus something. That is equal interval matters. In ordinal scale, see for example, if you are talking about first rank, second rank, third rank. First rank is having 99 out of 100. Second rank is having 98 out of 100. But there is no guarantee that third rank will be 97. Suppose the third rank got 68. So between 97 and 68, a huge gap is there. But the rank, positional wise, you have next rank, second rank and third rank. If you say that third rank, doesn't mean that you have equal interval there. Because first rank and second rank, there is an equal interval. At the same time, second and third rank, we don't have an equal interval. So that is the limitation of the ordinal scale. Then when we go for advanced statistics, it may not be appropriate. So in interval scale, we have the exact measurement. We have the exact measurement. So for that, we should have a correct parameter for the assessment, correct parameter for the evaluation and measurement. For example, if you are giving a mark, an achievement test to students, you should have the correct scoring key. First 20 scores are, 20 questions are objective type. So it is okay if the answer is correct, you are getting 1, otherwise 0. Then after 20, that is 21 to 25, you have essay type questions. So you have to clearly explain what are the parameters for judgment. That is, introduction carries 1 mark, conclusion may carry half mark or 1 mark. In between, what are the major attributes that you are going to ensure in your essay? So you have to mention specifically, even from quarter marks, 0.25 marks onwards, you can mention how many possible divisions you can have. Accordingly, you have to mention, then only it will be a real or clear-cut scoring or answer, what we call marking scheme or scoring scheme. Then, if you measure it, one got 98, the other got 67, that means the gap, even though the gap is there, we are not taking the rank, we are taking their original number, original marks we are taking. So it is known as interval type of measurement. Interval type of measurement. Here there will be independent measure for the candidates, independent measure for all the attributes. That is the significance of the interval measure. Now, Next is ratio measure. Ratio measure rarely we use in social sciences and behavioral sciences. At the same time, we use more in the basic sciences, natural sciences, physical sciences. So here see, ratio scale where there is an absolute zero. So here magnitude is there in ordinal. When we comes to the interval, magnitude plus equal interval. When we come to the ratio, magnitude is there, equal interval is there, plus third attribute of a scale, that is absolute value, that is absolute zero is there. In all the sense, for example, ratio scale and interval scale, sometimes there is a confusion for the researchers and scholars. So in an interval scale, for example, if you're taking intelligence as an interval, intelligence is generally an interval scale. You can convert into nominal and ordinal also, but here generally we call it as interval if you take exact measurement. So intelligence cannot be a ratio because we cannot say that zero for the intelligence. A person, his intelligence is zero. Definitely we won't say that his intelligence is zero. Similarly, why we are giving in Likert scale, we have a Likert format scale in Thurston scaling. Why we are giving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rather 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. If it is a 5-point scale, we generally go for 1 for the least response. If I strongly disagree, I may get 1 mark, not 0. Why? Because we cannot say that the person is having 0 attribute. Because this is relative. It is relative. Because if I ask you a question, if you are not able to answer, sometimes you will get 0. That doesn't mean that you are 0 in the achievement. If I give a question paper to you and your answer, I have assigned you 3 units. For students, I am going to give you 3 units today. Sorry, tomorrow there is an examination of 3 units. The next day I came to the class and I started asking questions from 3rd unit only. So some of the brilliant students, some of the students, those who were good in studies but not very good in studies, they started weeping and they couldn't write anything. Ultimately they got 0. What happened is you told them that you would conduct examination for 100 marks from 3 units, and at the end you started asking from the single unit. What happened? They learned all the 1st and 2nd units and they didn't get time for reading the 3rd unit. As a teacher, you did a mistake that you asked only from the 3rd unit. So ultimately they got 0. If you had asked something from the 1st unit, they could have scored better. They could have better. Sometimes if only the 1st unit, they could have better. They could have scored 100 out of 100. This kind of possibility is that is why we call it as interval only, not ratio. Because it is relative. We cannot say that exact 0 is there. Similarly, when it is a ratio scale, when we compare it with interval, in ratio there is a 0 measurement. Suppose I am taking something. Those who are attending my class regularly, at the duration of attendance of my class I am taking. I have taken 30 days class. So if I take the attendance of 30 days, how many students attended my class and what is the frequency? If I take, it is a ratio scale because those who have not attended, I can say 0 because he has not at all attended. This is 0. That type of measurement is ratio. When you can have absolute value of 0, that is considered a 0 type measurement. Generally in statistics, we learn example as Kelvin scale. In Kelvin scale, if you measure the temperature, you have 0 degrees Celsius. There is no temperature. Where there is no temperature, the point is 0. In behavioral science, this type of examples you can use: attendance or how many days you have attended for. If you are talking about a workout exercise in mental health, so how many days you have done workout? It is absolute 0 because I have not gone for any workout. It is 0 actually. There is no confusion in that case. This is actually the scaling pattern of a variable. So this is the basics of the idea. When you know this, then again there is another categorization of the scaling. We can call it, categorize it as quantitative variable and non-quantitative variable. Interval and ratio scales are together called as quantitative variable. Quantitative. Sometimes in research, in some statistical software, we call it as quantitative variable. interval and ratio together. So sometimes in SPSS, we call both the interval and ratio scale together as scale variable. Scale variable. Nominal, there is a mention. Ordinal, there is another mentioning. At the same time, interval and ratio together is known as scale type variable. In advanced statistics, in advanced textbooks of statistics, you can have another categorization, metric and non-metric. Interval and ratio scale together are known as metric measures. Metric and non-metric measurement. So when we advance towards the statistics, we may use this type of terminology. That is metric. Metric means that is either interval or ratio. Non-metric is nominal and ordinal. So you get the idea of the scaling is very basic idea that we have to have in mind. Now come to the categorization of the test. Test categorization is very serious issue that many of the students and scholars are least bothered about it. But at the same time, we have to have very clarity regarding the scale and the type of test that we are using. When we use a parametric test and when we use a non-parametric test, generally in statistics, we can divide the entire tests into either non-parametric or parametric. First of all, the basic test, that is, we can call it as non-parametric. When we use a non-parametric, when the data is not based on a normal distribution, that tests are known as non-parametric tests. So again, a question, in my research, did I use any test of normality? Then how can you say that my data is normal? So what is the basic criteria? Whenever you are approaching a statistic, you have to check whether the data is normally distributed or not. Otherwise, it will be an issue for your statistics. When issues in statistics, everything collapses because interpretation is failure. Some suggestion you will give that will not work out properly because you have not gone for a test of normality. If test of normality is not correct, you cannot choose appropriate statistics. So first and foremost, when you collect the data, you have to screen the data for the outliers. Generally, students never go for outliers check. Even in PhD dissertations, we cannot see that outlier removal. If your sample is 400, you will collect 400 sample and all the 400 will be in your dissertation. Actually, this is the issue that we are doing. This is the this is the idea that we are not focusing on. There should be the removal of outliers. For example, you are carrying out a research study having an experimental nature. So one student is highly performing in the class. He got 100 out of 100, but most of the students are below 75 and above 45. This is the range of your students. One student got 100 out of 100. Most of the other students got between 45 and 75. So 45 and 75 is the real cut rate, or we can call it range of your scores of your students. When you go for outliers, the 100 wala, those who are scoring 100, he may not be included in your data set. Because you may have, he was very good student, he is very student. How can I remove him? No, there is no that kind of sentiments in statistics. In statistics, if the data is out of the scene, you have to remove the data. If it is your 30 sample, you have to remove him and your sample will be 29 meters. So that is actually we have to do. Then the testing will be smooth. Sometimes if we have sometimes when PhD scholars present their data, we can see that the curve is highly skewed. Very skewness is very high, or sometimes the standard deviation is very high. Why? Because the normality we are not checking, or outliers we are not going to remove. The outlier removal is a mechanism that we have to do in the initial stage of the data analysis. Then you go for the checking of the normality. So when the data is not normal, my concern is that non-parametric. When the data is not normal, we have to use non-parametric. Don't worry, we will explain examples of non-parametric. Next thing is that there is no assumption that the data has been drawn from the normality. normally distributed data. Sometimes people say that I use the normal, simple random sampling. When the student, I tell you, if you are using a survey research or quantitative research, first of all, read how to draw a sample from a population. That is the basic failure that most of the research scholars face, because they don't know how to take a sample. And I can tell you, if you are taking a district-wise sampling, complete Thiruvananthapuram district, or the entire Kerala, sometimes people tell, I took only 3, north 1 representation, middle Kerala, I'll take Ernakulam, and southern Kerala, I'll take Kollam. I'll take 3 districts of Kerala to represent Kerala. Then I go for stratified random sampling also. Let me give you the stratified random sample and simple random sample. These are not at all possible for you if you are doing a PhD study and data collecting in a year. If you go for a stratified random sampling and simple random sampling, this is not possible in the scene of education. Let me give an example how to draw a sample. For example, if you are collecting the data from Thiruvananthapuram district, if it is a what kind of sample? Okay, probability sample. What is the first condition? You should know how many number is present in the population. Thiruvananthapuram higher secondary school students is my population. I should know how many students are there in higher secondary schools of Thiruvananthapuram district of Kerala. I should know, otherwise I cannot take the simple random and stratified random, proportionate random, systematic. Nothing I can take, because this is the condition. Number I should know. Second, I should have the complete list. Suppose how many schools will have in Thiruvananthapuram? I think, for example, 250 schools, government, aided, unaided, 250 schools. So all the 250 schools and their enrollment register you should have with you. Otherwise, you are not supposed to take a simple random, stratified random, proportionate sample, or systematic random. Do you have this? Please keep in mind this question. Do you have this? Next is, if you are selecting the simple random, out of these 250 schools, you have 100 students each, then definitely it is 25,000 students. If it is 100, definitely we have more than 100, because we have 3 streams in higher secondary. And there are first year and second year, 11th and 12th. So definitely, so at a minimum, we have 25,000 students. Out of this 25,000, if you are selecting 250, that is 1% of the total sample, or 2%, that is 500 students. So what way you are taking? From all the 25,000, you are taking the 250 students as the lot. From a box, you are writing all the names of 25,000 people. You are taking 250 students or 500 students. What will be the spread of the distribution? What way you are collecting? From every school, you have to collect the data. This will be the situation. Are you doing that? Otherwise, better don't go for this kind of sampling, because this is not possible. Simple random is not possible. Stratification is not possible. Same way we are stratifying. Only 2 segments we will have, or 3 segments we will have. Boys we will have another list, and girls will have another list. The rest of the things are with same way of simple random or systematic random we are doing. If it is systematic random, we are writing all in a number base, and we are selecting based on the equal periodicity of the number. That is the way of systematic random sample. So when the data is collected normally using probability sample, then it is okay, you can go for parametric. Otherwise, we are going for non-parametric statistics. Then some assumptions of the test are not fulfilled. What is the assumptions of test? Assumptions of the test. For example, if it is a product moment correlation, the assumption is that both the variables should be metric variable. That is either interval or ratio variable. That is the assumption of product moment correlation. But what is the assumption of t-test? Independent sample t-test? the major variable, that is the dependent variable, should be measured either interval scale or ratio scale. Second, there should be a categorical variable like sex category, locality, or type of management having two categories. That is the assumption of t-test. So this way you have to fulfill the assumption, then only you can go for parametric, otherwise we can go for non-parametric tests. Similarly, when the sample is very small, don't go for using advanced test, because if you use a t-test in a 15 sample, you have 15 boys and 15 girls and you are comparing with the t-test. It is not suggested that this is not good, because the assumptions and the interpretations may not be proper. So better in this case go for the non-parametric version. Got it? Now we are talking about the parametric, just opposite version. Parametric version. Very good scientific tests we are considered as parametric. We consider all of them as parametric, like one-way ANOVA parametric test, independent sample t-test is parametric, paired sample t-test is parametric, regression, multiple linear regression, we have parametric test, product moment correlation is parametric. See, data expressed in absolute values and not in rank. We don't have rank, we don't have simple categorization. We are exact rank. In the out of 50 students, their original marks we are taking. We are not going to grade them. We are not going to rank them. The original marks we are taking. It is based on a normal distribution. We tested it, the data for normality, and identify that okay, it is all right. The data is normally distributed. It depends upon the validity of assumptions. All the assumptions are fulfilled, then only we can go for parametric test. And we know that at least interval scale is required for assessment in case of parametric test. So when we decide statistics, nothing is a matter. These points are matter. What scaling you are you are going to use, what scaling it is, whether it is nominal, ordinal, interval, or ratio. Second is whether the assumptions of the test are fulfilled, whether the normality is ensured, the size of the sample matters. These are the points we have to take into account while designing something. This is some of the other ideas I don't want to. Must be independent. Observation must be independent. That you know. Observation must be independent, not a clubbing or ranking. Equal variance. That we call it as homogeneity of variance. Generally, we don't go for checking it, but this is an assumption. Sometimes we can check it also. If you are checking, for example, in Kerala, from Kerala, I am drawing 500 secondary school students through simple random sampling. So all the sample 500 is spread out across the Kerala. I am going to collect the data from all the parts of Kerala where the 500 students are there. Now, if I select this 500, if all of you select, you are hundreds of people are listening to me. So if you select another group, you will get another sample. Even though it is simple random, you can select another 500 as your sample. If we all of us go for its calculation, and if we check the variance, there is a chance of equal variance. That is known as homogeneity of variance. What is variance? The square of standard deviation is known as variance. Then what is standard deviation? It is the average deviation from the arithmetic mean. We can call it as square root of arithmetic mean of squares of deviations of observations from the arithmetic mean. From the average value to what extent the values are spread. That we are taking, and if all the people, all of us, all the 100 people go to collect the data using correct, perfect, simple random sample, perfectly we administer the same scale without any error, proper explanation has been given, then properly scored, and then we go for a test of normality, and we go for a arithmetic mean and standard deviation, and accordingly the variance will be more or less same. That concept is known as homogeneity of variance. If we have population, different population, their variance will have same kind of variance, similarity in the variance. That is known as homoscedasticity. Another concept is homoscedasticity. Suppose my title says that Kerala, but my study is delimited to Thiruvananthapuram district. Then your study is also Kerala, but yours is delimited to Kollam district. So we have two populations. My population is all the students of Thiruvananthapuram. Your population is all the students of Kollam district. So the variance of the population it should also be more or less same. The concept is known as homoscedasticity. Now come to, these are the basic things. Now come to the descriptive statistics. Whatever the reasoning part is, the everything we have discussed so far, because the statistical categorization and scaling, that is the sampling, scaling, and the categorization of tests into parametric and non-parametric. This is the base of statistical reasoning, what I perceived. Now come to the descriptive statistics. Again, there is a chance, there is an issue. Sometimes we come across what I select in central tendency. If you go to SPSS or R software, StatCraft, whatever it is, you have a software, everywhere you will get a point for clicking. When you click it and apply it, definitely you will get a result. But actually, sometimes we go for some foolishness. Sometimes we represent some unnecessary information in the statistics. I have an experience. When I was doing my PhD, in the second year of my PhD, when I was in Jamia Millia, I went to IGNOU headquarters for a presentation of a scale validation. My scale was being validated. I went for presentation. So I was reading something and I was having an impression that everywhere we will count or we will calculate the Cronbach alpha reliability. But the expert suggested me that Cronbach alpha will be used only for scales, not for a questionnaire. Questionnaire, you can go for a test retest reliability or split half or gut band, whatever it is, but never go for Cronbach alpha as one of the reliability for a questionnaire. It was a new information for me. Whenever we are learning, we have to, whenever we are doing something, we have to, in advance, we have to learn what is the conditions of that. Similarly, central tendency value, sometimes we go for arithmetic mean, median, mode. I was also writing in my dissertation, I have also written that arithmetic mean, median, and mode. But when statistically speaking, arithmetic mean is calculated only for scale type variable, scale type or metric or quantitative variable, that is interval or ratio scale. Then only you can go for arithmetic mean. If your data is in ordinal scaling, go for median as your central tendency. Don't go for arithmetic mean if the data is in rank. Go for median. If it is nominal variable, never go for arithmetic mean and median. Go for mode as your central tendency. This is the logical application of the central tendency value. In dispersion, generally we go for standard deviation, and that is used for mostly for the scale type variable, that is metric variable, interval and ratio type variable. Then what are the possibilities for us to write? Variance we can write, standard error we can write. These are the possibilities when we write the descriptive statistics. Sometimes people will never write the skewness and kurtosis. Actually, we know that we are talking about the normality all the time. We are comparing this curve and statistics with the normal curve. So whenever you have a data, always I suggest you to find out the skewness and kurtosis value, because it will give you to what extent it is skewed, whether it is positively skewed, the data, or it is negatively skewed, whether it is leptokurtic or it is platykurtic, or exactly the mesokurtic. Mesokurtic is the normal distribution. So if your data is having more height than the normal curve, it is leptokurtic. If the height of the curve is less, it is platykurtic. Similarly, skewness, zero skewness is for normal curve. If it is positively skewed, most of the students scored less mark. Positive side, there is a skewness. Because sometimes in the public service commission examination, if the examination is very tough, the curve of the candidates, the scores will be positively skewed. Because most of the students will be on the negative end. Those who have scored less mark will be high. So definitely the higher end, that is positive side, will be having a skewness. The opposite is negative. When we go for, sometimes for example, I can take you an example of the language scores of SSLC examination in Kerala. 10th matriculation examination of Kerala, if you take the language scores of Malayalam, Arabic, Tamil, Telugu, whatever it is, Sanskrit, Urdu, whatever it is we have. So if you take the scores, most of the students have high mark. That is, it is negatively skewed. That is the trend. Just I'm giving you an example. So skewness, kurtosis, always you mention. So these are the aspects. So whenever we are taking the central tendency value, you should have an idea behind it. Inferential, I don't want to explain what is inferential statistics. Let me go to the directly to the statistics and its logic when we can use the statistics. And plus parametric and non-parametric we have already discussed. When a parametric test is used and when a non-parametric test is used. The comparison chart is here. This is actually in advance. Before you analyze your data, you have to have an idea. That is, analysis plan is required. When you collect the data, before collecting the data, you have to fix which type of variable you have, whether it is in nominal or ordinal, interval or ratio. When you decide that, then accordingly you decide the technique of your sampling, collect the data, then you sit for a while with your supervisor, decide what is my analysis plan, which test I am going to use for this hypothesis. Come to the parametric test. In parametric test, we have a one sample t-test. So condition, parametric test is for large sample, the normality is ensured, and all the assumptions of the validity of the test are attained or we ensure, then we go for one sample t-test. So what is the mechanism of one sample t-test? When we use, suppose an average score is given and you are comparing the score with that of your students or that of your group. For example, you have a national average, last year average of subject, your Hindi subject, you are teaching Hindi. So last year SSLC examination, the average is 34 out of 50. This is the average mark of Hindi. So you're checking whether your students are performing relatively better than the average mark. Then you have a one score of last year's and now you have a individual score of your students. Then we can go for one sample t-test. Or some other index, we can say, okay, happiness index of Asian people are this much. For example, 56.5, happiness index of Indian people. Then you have a happiness scale. You are assessing the happiness scale of your group. Suppose you have taken a sample of professionals, then happiness you are taking, and you just scored, and they're comparing the entire scores of 500 people with a single score of happiness index of Asian people. Then you are comparing whether your group significantly differ or not. In that case, we use, if it is parametric test, we use one sample t-test. If it is non-parametric, we can go for one sample sign test or one sample Wilcoxon test. So if the sample is very small or you are doubtful about the normality, never go for one sample t-test. It will not give you a proper result. It will not be suitable. When you publish a paper, when you give for publication, nobody will accept you. How dare you to take a one sample t-test with 20 samples? They will ask you a question. This happens sometimes. So definitely you decide, no matter whether the test is this or that. Sometimes people say that if I don't have a t-test, people will laugh at me. If I take U-test, that is a second grade. No, that way. If you are using a wrong test, that is second grade actually. If you are using a right test for the right situation, that is first class. You are doing excellent job because your sample is very small. You used a purposive sample and you gone for a man by knee test. Very good. because it's perfect selection. Doesn't matter. Nobody will insist you have to select 400, 500 samples. It's an experimental study. You have only 30 students. So better go for Mann-Whitney U-test for comparison. Second case is two sample test. In two sample, we have various sampling formalities. One is we can take is independent sample t-test. In independent sample t-test, we have checking the two groups whether they differ significantly in a single parameter. And condition is that t-test, there is an assumption of t-test. What is t-test assumption? The testing variable, that is the dependent variable, should be a scale type variable, either interval or ratio scale. Then there should be only two categories, boys and girls, rural, urban, government, private, two categories only. In that case, we are going for independent sample t-test. The opposite, if you are not looking into a kind of test that is equivalent to the independent sample t-test, but you don't know whether it is normally distributed, you have confusion about it, your sample is very small, better go for Mann-Whitney U-test. Mann-Whitney U-test for comparison. It is good. If your sample is very small, better go for Mann-Whitney U-test. If you have taken some quota sample or convenient sample, better go for Mann-Whitney U-test. Next is paired sample t-test. Paired sample t-test. In paired sample t-test, that is in an experimental situation where we have pre-test and post-test. We have a single group, but there are two scores. In the independent sample t-test, we have single score on a single variable, but there are two groups. Here we have single group, but two scores. That is we have paired sample t-test or correlated t. So here we use the two, we use it as a paired kind of analysis. Here we can have another Wilcoxon test for paired sample if it is non-parametric. Then one-way ANOVA. When we use one-way ANOVA, people have some confusion regarding one-way ANOVA. When we use one-way ANOVA is used as a parametric test when your independent variable, that is main test variable, is measured either as interval variable or ratio variable.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, sir.
What is the full form of ANOVA, sir?
Analysis of variance.
Thank you, sir.
Variance. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Variance. We are analyzing the variance. Actually, t-test is also analyzing the variance. Okay. So now, if it is one-way analysis of variance, we are having more than two groups. Just like t-test, but here test grouping is more than two. More than two means 3, 4, 5, whatever it is. You can go for one-way ANOVA. And the opposite test, that is non-parametric mode of one-way ANOVA, is Kruskal-Wallis H test. Kruskal-Wallis H test or Moore's median test. These are possibility of non-parametric way of one variable and comparing more than two groups. Now, again, another question. When you have a one-way ANOVA, if it is significant, for having troubles, please make sure that you are mute. Yes, if one-way ANOVA finds significant, that is also known as F test. If one-way ANOVA is significant, the job is not finished. Again, we have to go for another testing of mutual comparison. That is multiple comparison. That is known as post hoc test. Post hoc test. When one-way ANOVA or Kruskal-Wallis H is significant, we have to go for mutual comparison, because I have, for example, I have urban, rural, semi-urban, three groups I have, and I am comparing the three groups together, and I got a finding that F value is significant. Then it will not give you which groups are having differences. For that, if it is significant, if F test or one-way ANOVA value is significant, then we are going for mutual comparison, that is multiple comparison using post hoc test. There are many post hoc tests. Duncan is one test. Sheffy test is the Newman and Cooley, LSD, Bonferroni. Many tests are there. You can take any one that is suitable for you. I suggest you, before going to apply any test, please find out the assumption of the test. What are the assumptions? When we use Bonferroni, what is the merits of Bonferroni over LSD? What is the Sheffy test? Whether Sheffy test is the best form of multiple comparison. Please go for such kind of analysis in your search engine. Then you decide. Mostly all the tests are having same kind of test because different persons have developed different tests. That is the only way of post hoc analysis. Nothing difficult in that. Now another is factorial test. That generally in education we don't practice, but in advanced statistics we use factorial kind of test. If you have very large sample and we have multiple comparisons together. For example, now in one-way ANOVA, what we have done, locality of residence, we have 3 groups and we have another one, the main variable, achievement. The achievement we compare based on the locality, urban, rural, semi-urban. 3 groups, I go for one-way ANOVA. Two sample t-tests, that is independent sample t-test, I did achievement, boys and girls, or achievement, rural, urban. Only 2 groups and achievement as main variable. One-way ANOVA, 3 or more than 3 groups. Above 2, everything is one-way ANOVA. But one variable is there. In factorial test, we are taking various tests together, various parameters together. I am taking boys and girls and rural urban together for comparison. In such case, I have to go for factorial test. Factorial ANOVA it will write, if I take rural urban, that is two-folded variable. Another two-folded variable I am taking boys and girls, sex category. So it will be 2 by 2 factorial ANOVA. 2 by 2 factorial ANOVA. Because 2 layers I am taking from one categorical variable. Another category we have locality. Again, there are 2. This is 2 by 2 ANOVA or 2 by 2 factorial test. Its opposite test is Friedman test. Opposite it is, that means non-parametric mode, non-parametric way of testing. That is Friedman test. You got the idea now. Now let us go to, this is I have already explained, correlation. There are many forms of correlations we have. Many forms of correlations. But the one correlation, sometimes people all the time go for Pearson's correlation. Don't go for Pearson's correlation until it is an interval or quantitative variable. Scale variable, metric variable, both the variable. I have given you X and Y. X and Y you can read. In the row, I have Y and the column side, I have X. So X, if X is quantitative or interval plus Y is also interval, that is Pearson's product moment correlation. If I have one is ordinal, I am checking, I have the rank of the students and their intelligence. I can also go for a comparison. Rank of the students and their intelligence score as such. Then I can go for a correlation, that is biserial correlation RB. If I have nominal correlation, nominal students grading I have, whether they are having ABC, it is nominal, grading nominal. It is not rank actually, ABC, grading. So it is actually a kind of nominal data. Then I have an interval scale, that is their achievement. So, sorry, not achievement, achievement based grading, that is nominal. Here I have intelligence. So I'll go for point biserial correlation if I need a correlation. Then Spearman, when Spearman wrote Spearman's rank correlation, when we calculate, both the variables are ordinal in nature. Chemistry marks I have, it is given in rank, and language marks I have given in rank. I would like to check whether the chemistry rank and language ranks are having any kind of association. I can go for a Spearman rank correlation. Got it? This is the chart that will give you clarity regarding which correlation can be used when the variable and the nature you have to have a clarity. Accordingly, we can go for correlation. And now regression, another calculation that is for prediction. For advanced calculation, we have to go for prediction. If the correlation is significant, then we are going for regression. Some assumptions are there for regression. What are the assumptions of regression? Some issues, some concerns we have to take into account. Let me brief out. One assumption is there should be a relationship between variables, but there should not be a strong relation dependent independent variable के बीच में and between dependent independent variable. Similarly, between the two independent variables, there should not be strong correlation. That is the assumption of regression. Similarly, all the variables should be measured through, just like product moment correlation, scale variable, metric variable. Then there is another correlation, logistic regression. In logistic regression, what will be the major predictor variable will be dichotomous. Yes or no only, 0, 1 only, 2 categorization only. That kind of regression is known as logistic regression, the dichotomy in the predictor variable. Similarly, if you have a categorical variable, that also we can do regression in SPSS. There is a possibility of using with categorical variable. Just a minute. Now, see, if there is a strong correlation between this, there is a chance of multicollinearity. If there is a strong issue between the variables, strong relationship between variable, that will lead to multicollinearity. Your regression result may not be accurate. Okay. Now, other forms that we can just look into, one-way ANOVA, that I have already explained. Factorial ANOVA, I have already explained. Then MANOVA. Next is MANOVA. What is MANOVA? When we use MANOVA, if you have multiple independent variable, we can go for factorial ANOVA. If you have multiple independent variable also, then we are going for multivariate analysis of variance. MANOVA. Many factors, many dependent variables we are taking together. That is MANOVA. Then what is ANCOVA? Sometimes we go for ANCOVA. That is analysis of covariance. When we go for ANCOVA, when we have a covariate, for example, if I am looking into the sex category wise whether achievement is different, then if I take it intelligence as a covariate, or sometimes we in experimental research we use sex category wise there is a difference in the post test and we are taking the pre-test as covariate. That way, in that situation, especially in if we have two categories or if we have an experimental and control group, if you have a two group design, then you can go for analysis of covariance. Then recent techniques you must be knowing: moderation analysis, mediation analysis. Moderation is what is actually the moderation analysis? These days people start using moderation and mediation analysis also in educational and psychological research. There are plenty of studies in management and commerce where people started using moderation and mediation. It is the way to check whether the third variable influence the strength or direction of the relationship between two variables. You have a dependent and independent variable and you are checking whether the third variable enhances or weakens the relationship. For that, we are going for moderation and mediation analysis. process macro through SPSS, we can use that. So this is about my presentation. The other things now we can take some questions. If you have some questions. All the significant tests I have covered. If you have any significant questions, please.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, I have one doubt. What are the conditions for applying the analysis of covariance test?
Okay, in analysis of covariance, for example, generally we go for covariance with pretest and we have a pretest posters of two groups. So here you should have one covariate. Covariate will limit the issues of your final assessment. That is, here generally what we use covariate, we consider it as pretest score. So pretest score will regulate as a mediator, that will be act as a covariate. That's effect will be controlled. Yes. Similarly, if you have sex category wise comparison of your some poster scores, for example, in that also you can take some covariate. Sometimes nowadays people start practicing only the pretest scores as the covariate. Earlier when I was an MBA student, that time I used to observe that people start taking another variable like intelligence and use it as a covariate. That is also the perfect way of taking covariate, because if the intelligence makes an issue in your study, better you have to make sure that intelligence will not have an impact on that. So you have to control the impact of that variable and it will be taken as a covariate. Some questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes. Let me check.
So there are some questions in the chat box. Can I read?
Okay, let me check. Can two-tailed Man-Whitney U-test and one-way ANOVA or rank be used in the same analysis? No means if your data is normally distributed, you can go for one-way ANOVA. If your data, and I don't know whether two data you are using, one with the normality and other without normality. Better in that case, if one is normal and other is not normal, better go for non-parametric test. Altogether you can do non-parametric. Don't go for one parametric and the other non-parametric. So you can use Man-Whitney U-test and H-test, Kruskal-Wallis H-test. That will be the suggested things. Standardizing data, that is standardization data. Someone has dimpled. So standardization means if you take the data, first you screen whether the data is accurate. Then once the data is clear, go for a screening of your data through outliers, finding out the outliers. When I can give you an example, when I conducted a research recently about engineering college students and their achievement and the predictors of achievement, I got around 900 something data, 900 plus data. At the end, I got only 786. 780, I don't exactly know, but it is below 800. But 100 plus data I removed because with all pain and strain we collected the data. But for statistics, we need not include all the data, because when the data is not clear, the assumptions will be wrong. The assumptions means the interpretations will be wrong. The clarity will not be there. So when you need a clarity, statistically, you have to screen and clean your data through outlier. Identify the outlier through box plot or any other technique. You can identify the data set. You can completely eliminate. If 781 is not okay, so you remove it. 700 is not okay. Remove it. 13, number 13, entered data is not okay. You can remove it. Accordingly, we are removing and deleting the data. Final data, then it will be used, and then we go for checking of the normality. One tail or two tail test is another question. It is a very good question. In between, I missed one. Kurtosis value. Kurtosis value is actually a height of the distribution. It's generally it's a mesocritic. So whether it is above or below, in order to check the status of your distribution, we go for whether it is leptokurtic or platykurtic. It itself, from the curve itself, it will be seen. Then one tail or two tail, actually it is the thing that the research scholars have to have a clarity. When your hypothesis is directional, definitely you have to go for one tail. Directional means my study, my model is effective than normal method or some other model, or my blended learning model is effective than discussion method. If you say this kind of hypothesis, then definitely you have to test the one tail test. Don't go for two tailed. That you have to have a clarity. If there is a significant difference between students undergone through blended learning and discussion method, if you say there is a difference, you can go for two tail, because you don't have a clarity in advance. Your hypothesizing is non-directional, then you go for two tail. If you say that my model is effective, then you can go for one tail all the time. Don't go for two tail. One tail is suggested. It is the only possibility. If you say that boys performing better than girls, go for one tail, because you know that boys are performing better. Then never go for two tail test. Unwise multivariate analysis of variance. Yes. Carl Pearson method to analyze given sample data. Carl Pearson's method of coefficient of correlation, I don't get exactly the idea. How effective means, I didn't get. Dependent variable is a package and two independent variables. So if I want to go for correlation, which correlation? I don't get the idea of which correlation. Seema, can you identify? Can you?
Sir, you have talked about Pearson's and so many correlation, no?
Yes, yes. So if it is correlation, what are the variables you have here?
One is dependent variable is a package, and the other one self-efficacy and social intelligence.
Okay, what you are correlating? That is my question.
No, sir, I'm not correlating. If I want to go for a correlation, which type I have to?
So in that case, actually there should be a logic. Why you are correlating? The logic also required. When you self-efficacy and the other variable you can correlate, but the package, if you are correlating the achievement, it's okay. Achievement, if you have achievement, then it's okay. Correlation, product moment correlation, plus the conditions we have to ensure. Regression is also regression is actually for prediction. If you have a x variable, you can say this will be the y. If you have x variable, you can say that this will be the y.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
So my question is not over, sir.
Yes, yes.
Sir, is there any percentage measure in taking the sample from the total population?
There are many formula available. There are many formula available.
Okay.
You can have it from various textbooks. There are various formula. But actually, better I suggest you, if it is a survey design, better we can go for multi-stage cluster sampling or cluster sampling. A district complete population I'll take, district-wise complete, or 2-3 panchayats in a. You are in a district, so you take 3 panchayats and all the students of 3 panchayats you can take. So that will be cluster. But you are not supposed to remove some of the students. All the students you have to take. That is the clustering.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you.
Size of sample. Okay. Any other questions?
Hello, sir.
Yes, yes.
Sir, Swami from UPSC. So we are always discussing about scales, but
yes,
nowhere we are discussing about indexes or indices.
Yes, yes. Yes,
Index also.
Yes, yes. Index, na. So,
Can
can
something
you?
be arranged for the construction and the validation of these indexes, sir?
Yes, yes. Construction and validation of this. Yes, yes. That is actually it requires many more time for explanation. I know the when we especially when we take the development of scales of the departments we have in education research, we generally, as you explained, we are not really focusing on the exact idea. It is not exactly the way of, we are just doing a simple pilot study and we are coming up with a validation. And sometimes people say that it is face validity and control validity is established. No more. So when we have some serious measures to develop, the strict procedures we have to have. I think we have to have more idea regarding your idea. I got it, but I also need some more time to explore it.
Okay, sir.
Yes, yes. We can discuss it in detail. Any other question?
Hello, research scholars. Kindly check the questions in the chat box.
Yes, sir. Chat box we have seen.
Okay,
Almost
okay,
questions
okay,
we
okay,
have seen.
okay, sir. Thank you, Samir, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hello, dear Dr. Samir, sir. It was highly educative. Your session was highly educative, and I am damn sure that all those who attended today's talk have benefited a lot. And the YouTube video that we are going to upload in the internet, the video that we are going to upload in the internet will also be beneficial to hundreds of research scholars, so that because they would watch it, and they would develop insight into the correct procedures of doing research. Now, so there is a message, sir, when the sample size is 35, t-test or z-test, please explain the difference.
Okay, that and T and Z, there is some confusion actually. Actually, it is when we go for T and Z in certain situations. I have to look into that and I'll tell you. Okay, who is the person? In T test also we have small t and large sample t and correlated t. And Z we have many Z tests, and sometimes Z test is for checking the what we call is checking the whether the coefficients effect is good or not. For that also we are using Z. And generally when we go for the t test, it is we talk about independent sample t and correlated t or pair t, and we have one sample t. Regarding Z test, I will check and I will tell you. Okay. Sir, who is the person? Please note, and I will share with you soon. Today itself, I will share with you the details. Okay.
So my name is Sapna. I had asked that question. I'm an MS scholar.
Okay, okay. I'll tell you. Okay, I'll share with Jojo sir.
Okay,
thank you,
sir.
Samir,
Thank
sir.
you very much.
Okay, okay. Yes.
So I was just giving a feedback of the program, Dr. Samir sir. It was highly educative, and I learned a lot in today's talk, and this is perhaps one of the best talks I have ever listened in the field of educational research. Thanks, and all of us are really indebted to you, and this would help all of us to do research with more focus and more quality. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Benedict sir, are you there, sir? Actually, Dr. Samir sir, we had some very important things in the department of Martha Plus Training College, because some people are joining the office of Martha Plus Training College. Some new faculty are being inducted to the faculty team. That's why Benedict sir had to attend that welcome program. That's why he's absent. But many people from Tamil Nadu and different parts of India are participating in this program. Thank you very much for spending your valuable time in this platform. All of us are indebted to you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Shall we proceed to the concluding part? Dear research
Yes.
scholars, please.
Okay, sir. Dear participants, here we come to the conclusion of Google platform. I call Sanila Manoj to express the words of gratitude.
Thank you, Soumya. Good evening, everyone. Nothing is more honorable than a grateful heart. First of all, let me thank Almighty for this great opportunity and for the blessing they showered throughout this meeting. Let me express my gratefulness to our today's guest of honor, Dr. Sami Babu sir, Assistant Professor, Department of Education, University of Kerala, for the inspiring talk on statistical reasoning in educational research. The talk was very useful and an eye-opener for all of us. It definitely gives us an insight on the importance of statistical reasoning in education research. Most of us are afraid of statistics. We know that. Thank you, sir, for the simple explanation and making statistics more understandable for us. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. This talk surely benefited everyone. On behalf of everyone present here, let me express our gratitude to you, Samir sir. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Let me thank our principal, Dr. K.Y. Benedict sir, who is the strength of our institution. Respected sir's insight and leadership are the force which keeps us going. Wholehearted thank you, sir, on behalf of everyone present here. Thank you so much, Benedict sir. Let me now convey my gratitude to our research coordinator, Dr. Joju John sir. His motivation and immense positive energy is the power behind all our programs. I thank you, sir, on behalf of each one of us present here. Thank you so much, Dr. Joju John.
Thank you.
Let me next express my gratefulness to our dear Dr. Ansi ma'am, Assistant Professor, Martha Phillips Training College, for all the technical support she is providing for our insight in depth from the very first talk. Thank you so much, Ansi ma'am. On behalf of everyone, every members of our research wing, thank you so much. Thank you, Ansi ma'am. Let me next express my wholehearted thanks to all the respected guides, teachers, all the well-wishers, and all the research scholars and students of B.Ed and M.Ed for your valuable presence, which makes this initiative a great one. Thank you so much for all your participation. Thank you. Next, I would like to thank Soumya, our secretary, and all the research scholars of our Martha Phillips Training College Research Wing on behalf of everyone present here. Thank you so much. Let me conclude my part with the words of Simon Sinek. Words may inspire, but action creates change. So, dear friends, what we hear from our Insight in Depth every week, make sure we all must put it into action and create change. Once again, thank you all. We will meet again next week with another thought-provoking Insight in Depth. Stay safe. May God bless you all. Thank you so much. Thank you. Over to you, Soumya.
Okay, thank you, Sanila. We again come together with more enthusiasm since we wind up this session joyfully. Now, let us rise for the national anthem.
शुभ नामे जागे, तब शुभ आशीष मांगे, गाहे तब जय गाथा, जन गण मंगल मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
Thank you
Thanks
all.
a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.